Welcome to Stitch Back Stories. Today I'm going to show you how I digitized this adorable Snoopy on Ice design. So let's get started. Please don't judge my spins. I am an adult skater. I'm using Embroidery Stitch Artist Level 2 and I already have my image set up. So if I select the image and go to selection mode, this is the dimensions that I have for it. And then I'm just going to switch to millimeters because I like to digitize in millimeters and then go back to create mode. I've also already selected the thread colors that I want and I put them here in the order that I want them to be stitched. And these are just blocks of stitches, so I'm going to delete them when I'm done digitizing. So the first color I have is this light blue that I'm going to use for the base of the beanie as well as the ice. So I'm going to select draw with points and then fill stitch. And then I'm going to make sure the color is in that light blue that I've selected. And then I'm going to press 6 on my keyboard to zoom in. And to pan, I just like to hold the space bar while clicking and dragging. Now, if you're completely new to digitizing, I have a whole series that goes step by step, more in depth into the entire process. So I would start there. I will link them all in the description. So to start with this shape, I'm going to start drawing a little bit on the outside because I want to make sure there's no gaps when I overlay these colors. As I turn this corner, I'm going to hold control on my keyboard for that sharp corner and then I'm going to click and then I'm going to finish this shape, giving tons of room on the sides. And then once I get to the top, I'm just going to taper it. And then again on this side, I'm going to give it more space on the side. And then I'm going to finish this shape by right-clicking my mouse. And this is looking a little bit wonky, so I'm just going to go in and clean it up and make sure it looks nicer. Again, if you're unfamiliar, as your machine stitches across like this, it's pulling in on the sides, which is why I'm giving it more space. Once it stitches, it'll be closer to where I want it to be. Okay, now I'm happy with this. I can press this eyeball if I don't want to see the stitches and I just want to see the shape that I drew. And you can toggle this on and off. I'm going to select this layer and now edit the actual density and stitch length. I like to make my density more around 4.5 to 5. And I think for here, 5 is going to be good. 5 means it's less dense, 4 is more dense. The sweater I'm using is this darker blue color, so this light blue doesn't really need to be that dense because it'll blend nicely with the color of the sweater. So I'm going to select this again, density 5. The length, I'm going to bring it up to 5, so the stitches are going to be longer. I don't like my stitches being too tight because it creates a lot of tension and it makes the design really dense, so that's why I make the stitch length longer. And then I'm going to go over here to underlay. I'm going to keep the contour and the perpendicular, but I don't feel like I need that many perpendicular lines. So I'm going to bring the density up to 32. That just means that the cross stitches here are more further apart. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw the ice. So I'm pressing 6 on my keyboard again, and then draw with points, fill stitch. And I'm going to start here. Since this is the top of the shape, I can stay roughly in the same spot of the image, and then as I come out to the sides where there is that pull compensation, I'm going to make sure to bring my stitches out. And then again at the bottom, I'm going to keep it pretty level with where the image is. And then on the side, we're coming out again for that pull compensation. Now his little skates are going to be on top of the ice, so you can cut across directly here or you can save just a couple stitches and come down over here. And then I'm going to right click to finish this shape, and then again I'm going to go back and clean it up to my liking. I'm not too worried about the shape of the ice because it's in organic manner, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. The settings for this fill stitch will be the same settings that I had for the previous fill stitch, so I'm just going to leave this as is. Alright, the next color is this darker blue, and it's just going to be the details in the beanie. So again, I'm going to go to draw with points, fill stitch, and then I'm going to select that darker blue color, and I'm going to go ahead and draw this shape. I'm going to just slightly overlap with this other fill stitch, but it doesn't matter too much because it's going to be covered by the black outline. So we're going to come out. I'm going to hold control on my keyboard to turn the corner. Again, we're giving more space on the sides. And then I'm going to round this corner and then come through and then come out here and finish the shape. Right click to close, and this again should be in the same settings as before. I'm going to make minor adjustments here, and that should be good. And now I'm going to make the little foofball using the same techniques. Keep in mind, for objects that are smaller like this, the pull compensation will not be as intense, so you don't need to bring this out all the way over here because there's not much for the thread to pull on. Just give it a little bit of extra space. And because this object is pretty small, I'm going to make the length of the thread a little bit shorter. Moving on, we have this silver color, and that's just going to be for the blade of the skates. Same thing, draw with points, fill stitch. I'm going to change the color to the silver color, and I'm going to draw this shape. I actually want the direction of the stitches to go up and down instead of left and right. So I'm going to give it space at the top and at the bottom. But again, this is a really small shape, so it doesn't matter too much. Going back to the fill properties of this, I'm going to bring the density down to 4, and I'm going to keep the length at 4.5. Again, this is because it's such a small object. It's only about 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters across. So if the stitches are too long, it's kind of hard to fill in that tiny space. I'm going to move these yellow dots so that they're moving up and down instead of left to right. And that just changes the direction of the stitches. And that's just a visual preference. Then I'm going to finish off the other skate blade. And this one, I am going to keep the stitch directions left and right. If you ever want to remove a point and you don't like it, you can just double click the point. If you ever want to add a point, you can just double click on the line. I'm going to leave the settings of this blade the same as this little one. The color of the blade is pretty similar to the ice, so I want to make sure this is dense enough to show over the ice. Moving on to the brown color, we're going to make the little skate boots, and this is a pretty easy shape. Again, just using the fill stitch, nothing new here. And because this boot is facing up like this, I think I want the stitches to run up and down. So I'm going to give room up at the top and at the bottom. Hold and click. Oh, and to go back, you can just press delete or backspace on your keyboard. Right click to close, and then going to clean up this shape. And then I'm going to grab these yellow nodes again, and then I'm going to shift them so that they're running up and down in the direction that I want it to. This shape, I'm going to go back to the settings that I've had previously. So I'm going to bring a density of 5 and a length of 5 to the stitches. And then I'll go ahead and do the other boot. The way this is facing, I could have it go across like this. I think I kind of wanted to follow that same direction of this boot. So I'm going to have it come across like this. So that means the pull compensation is going to come over here and here. So it's a little bit angled. If the pull compensation is confusing to you, I would just say to have everything go left and right until you get a little bit more advanced. Okay, we're moving pretty quickly, and now we get to do Snoopy's body, and this is where the design will really start to come together. Again, we're going back to that regular fill stitch. I'm going to change the color to the white that I have, and I'm going to keep the direction of the stitch just left and right to keep it simple. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, because he is skating at this angle, you can make the stitches run diagonally like this, but I'm going to keep it simple here because it is a bigger, slightly more complex shape. So I'm going to start here, giving room out for the pull compensation, then coming in close at the tops and bottoms, more room on the sides, less room on the tops and bottoms. Hopefully that makes sense. And you're going to see the most pull compensations on these big bodies of shape. Here where the hand is, it's a little bit smaller, so it probably won't be as intense. It could be because the stitches are coming all the way down here, but I think we'll be good here. I will run a test stitch to see if I need to bring it out more, but definitely this area where it's nice and chunky, I'm going to give it a lot of room. And then I'm overlapping with the boot here so we don't have any gaps. I'm not worried about his black spots because I'm just going to stitch the black directly over the white. Then again here, I'm overlapping slightly with the hat. And then right click to close. And then I'm going to go in and clean up the shape. If the stitches are in your way, you can turn them off. It'll be a little bit easier to see. And I do like to get rid of any excess stitches. So just double clicking the node to get rid of it. If you ever have a sharp corner that you need to turn into a curve, you can just right click and select curve, and then it'll add the little curve editor. I'm liking how that looks. These are the settings that I have. I'm actually going to change the length to 5. All right, moving on to Woodstock. Going to select the yellow. He's pretty easy. He's kind of just a blob. It doesn't really have to be perfect just because the way that he's sketched. So I'm not going to be too particular with this one. And I'm just drawing this as one big shape. Going to clean it up a little bit. Mostly concerned about this area. I'm definitely going to have to do a test run and make adjustments here. It's just so small and tight, and then we're going to go in with the black stitches. So it might get a little bit dense in this area. All right, for the fill, I'm going to leave the density 5, and length, I'm going to bring it down to 4 just because he's a smaller shape. All right, this is what we have so far, and now that I'm looking at it, I realize I forgot to make the little reflections on the ice. So I'm going to go back and select my white thread, but instead of the fill stitch, I'm going to do the satin stitch, and I'm going to use the satin column. I think this is only on Stitch Artist level 2, so if you have level 1, you can just do a regular satin stitch. This is pretty easy. It doesn't need to be pretty. For the settings, I'm fine with density 4, length 4. I don't really need the parallel underlay, but I'll keep the edge on. Go ahead and draw these shapes. Again, I'm not too worried about how perfect these are. And I'm drawing some of these pretty fat, but keep in mind that each of these boxes are only 1 millimeter, so this is still a relatively thin line. I'm going to give it a little bit more space. It doesn't have to be in the exact position of our reference image. I'm going to make this a little wider. That looks good. Okay, now the final part is to do the black outline, and this is going to be the most tedious part. There is no right place to start this, so I'm just going to go ahead and knock out the Woodstock. Starting with this squiggle, I'm going to go to my satin column stitch. And when I draw this, I have to pay attention to where the squiggles overlap. So I want it overlapping here and here. So I'm going to make sure to draw those shapes separately. So I'll go ahead and just start with the tail. And I'm going to go just a little bit past the line so that I don't have any gaps when this gets stitched out. Oh, and I'm going to make sure this color is in black. For the setting, this is a pretty small shape. Density, I'll bring it up to about 4.5. Length is fine. And I'm going to take off the parallel underlay. And then I'm going to do this part of the squiggle, either start from this end or this end. It doesn't really matter. But I just want to make sure that this squiggle is stitched after that first part because this is the part that overlaps. And I'm just going to go ahead and clean this up. Normally, I don't like to zoom in past 6, but because this is so dense, I'm going to do it just to make sure I can get rid of any extra nodes that I don't need. These yellow nodes indicate the direction of the stitch, so in these tight spaces, you want to make sure they don't overlap like this because it'll mess up your stitches. Make sure they are just going across the column. And then for the start and end points, so if this is my first object, it's starting here, ending here. So I want the second one to start where that first one ends. And then I want it to end up here. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw this last squiggle. Right click to close. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. And again, because this squiggle ends over here, I want to make sure the next one starts at that same spot. And then I go and do these two lines. These are pretty simple. Clean this up. And this one I can just copy and paste and drag that second one over. I'm going to have the second one start right next to where this one ends. So there won't be a jump stitch. You can see the machine here, it'll just attach these two pieces together. I'm going to go ahead and select both of these squiggles. So I'm going to select one, hold shift, select the next one. I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to bring it over, and I'm just going to turn it around. Okay, for the outline of Woodstock, because there's a lot of overlapping lines here, and if I make it all a satin stitch, it's going to get very crowded and very dense. So I'm just going to outline it in a run stitch. And if I select this yellow base part of Woodstock and I go to selection mode, I can see that this is not even an inch big. So it's a really small object, and the run stitch should outline it perfectly fine. Back to create mode. Again, it doesn't really matter where we start here. I'm going to select draw with points, and then I'm going to select the lines. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard so that I can draw exactly where I want the stitches to be. If you don't hold Control, it's going to start adding curves to your stitches. So draw with points, run stitch, holding Control, and I'm just going to start drawing this guy. So starting here, I'm just going to trace the line, and I'm going to make about 3 to 4 passes to really thicken up that outline. Right click to close here, draw with points, lines, and then draw this line. Right click to close. So here we're going to have a jump stitch. This object will finish here. It'll go to this next one. So I should get a jump stitch over here. Okay, back to draw with points. Going on to this line. Again, I'm making about 3 passes to each area. Right click to close. Continue to draw with lines. Now for these spots here, oops, I didn't give them the run stitch. So right now they're just a line. For this area here, I'm being intentional where my start and end points are. So I'm starting here, or ending here, then starting here, and then ending here, then starting here. So if you see these red lines, those are my jump stitches. You could have it so the jump stitch is just going straight across. That would make the jump stitch shorter. The reason why I do it at these diagonals is because when I go to cut them with my scissors, it's easier to cut when the jump stitch is at a diagonal, as opposed to being in the same direction of my stitches. If it's in the same direction of my stitches, there's a chance I might accidentally cut one of these stitches. And we don't want to ruin our beautiful Woodstock design. So it's kind of a preference thing, but that's what I have found that's helped for me. Anyways, I'm going to continue outlining the rest of Woodstock, remembering to hold Control. And you can either outline the entire area and then come back, or you can do it in sections like this. So I'll grab a section and then I'll do my 3 passes, and then I'll keep going. Maybe put in a smile, which this one will end up having 4 passes, which is totally fine. And I'm just going to continue outlining. Again, there's no perfect way to do this. Go with whatever works for you. And right click to close. Hopefully this doesn't look too crazy once I stitch it out. And I'm realizing now I forgot his eyeballs. I'm going to do 4 passes just to make sure those eyes don't get lost. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right click to close. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right click to close. Okay. Now for the order that I have this, I have the spiral going first. So we already set those start and end points. And then we have these 2 columns. I'm actually going to move these 2 columns to the very end after the eyes. So from this, we'll go straight into drawing Woodstock. It'll go to the eyes, and then it'll do the other columns. Okay, moving on to Snoopy. Again, there's no perfect place to start this, so I'm just going to go ahead and start at the eyes. And this time I am going to use the satin stitch, and I'm just going to start following the outline. I'm giving it a little bit of extra space for the pull compensation. And I'm doing my best to put these nodes in the direction that I want the stitch to be in, but honestly, I prefer to do this part quicker and just go back and adjust after I finish the base of the shape. Right click to close, turn my stitches back on, and then make my adjustments. For the settings, I'm good with a density of 4.5, length 4, sounds good. I'm going to have an edge run, and I'm fine with keeping the parallel off. Alright, now I'm going to do the skate. For this part, I'm going to close here just past the blade. Okay, making a minor adjustment. I'm going to end this right over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. And I'm going to check the stop point for this first shape is up here. So for the shape after, I'm going to start it directly after that. And then I'm going to end it over here because I'm going to go ahead and start drawing this part of the blade. Right click, and I'm going to clean up this spot, getting rid of those extra nodes. And then cleaning up the yellow nodes for the stitch direction. And then I just like to double check the start and end point. So this one stopped here. The next one starts right there. And then this one's gonna end here. And then I'm actually gonna do a run stitch so that I can travel the stitches to this area and then start drawing this inside of the blade. Right click close. Okay, so we have this shape that ends here, and then we have a run stitch that travels the thread to this area, draws the next satin column. I'm going to scoot this over, and then this one ends over here, and I can continue drawing the rest of this blade here. I'm just going to cross these stitches a little bit so that there's no gap. I'm going to close this here and clean this up. Okay, from here, I'm going to draw this little detail on the boot and then clean this up. And I'm just going to make sure that this one starts right where the previous one ended, and I'm going to make sure it ends back over here so I can draw the rest of that boot. Alright, since I ended up finishing over here, I'm going to just start drawing up Snoopy this way, continuing with the satin column stitch. I ended this shape here so that I can draw his little funky finger. Oops, got a little bit wonky with his shape. Confused myself a little bit. No biggie, just gonna go in and clean up the stitches. I know that this is a little bit hard to see right now, so just bear with me. I need to add a node here, so I'm gonna select this tool and add one there. And maybe one here too. Okay, so this one starts where the previous one ended, and I want this one to end on this side so I can continue drawing. Alright, so I just got to the nose and I'm going to use a fill stitch to do that. I'm not too concerned about this looking perfect. I'm just going to fill the shape, going to start it over here and end it over here as well. Density 5, length 4.5, contour perpendicular. I'm fine with those settings. I'm not too worried about it. And I'm just going to continue drawing. Honestly, I wasn't really sure what was the best way to approach this area. So I finished off this part of the head and then I started this base of the beanie. I think I'm going to go ahead and just draw these in now. So I'll make one satin column stitch, have it start at the right, end at the left. I'm going to bring the density down a little bit just because it's such a small shape. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste as it moves over to the left. Going to rotate this slightly and rotate slightly. Okay, so now we ended up over here, which is good because I actually want to draw this part of the ear first because I want this part of the hat to stitch over it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my fill stitch. I'm going to give it some extra space for the pole compensation, but I'm not too worried about this shape. It doesn't need to look perfect. Control on my keyboard to turn the corner and right click to close. I have a density of 5. Length, I'm just going to bring it up to 5. Contour, perpendicular, looks good. All right, so this finished up here. It went into this shape. Bring the start and end points over here. And I'm going to bring the end point of this over here so that there won't be a jump stitch. It'll just stitch across. Now we can go ahead and finish off this base of the hat. And I'm actually going to draw from here and draw around back to over here. Correction, I'm actually going to stop right here, and I'll show why in a second. I'm going to make sure this density is back up to 4.5. Okay, so we finished off the ear, and then we went to this piece. So I'm going to bring it over where the ear finishes. And then it ends over here. Again, I'm going to use that run stitch technique, where I'm just bringing the thread over here so I can draw the top part of the hat. So I'll go ahead and draw the rest of this base. I'll have this start where that run stitch ended. I'll have it end up here and then draw the bowl of the hat. And honestly, now that I'm looking at this looks way too wide. Maybe it's not, but it looks like it. We won't really know until we do our test stitch. Okay, so this started here, ended here. Let's make the little floof. I am being very general with this. I messed up a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to go back and fix it. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure it ends over here to finish off the rest of the beanie. And make sure this starts up here. Okay, and for the rest of Snoopy, there's no new techniques we're using here. It's going to be the same thing that we've been doing throughout the rest of this digitizing project. Satin stitch all the way through, satin stitch for the collar. The only difference is that I'm going to do a fill stitch for a spot. And I want to make sure I stop the satin stitch here, do the fill stitch, and then run the rest of the satin stitch over so the outline is on top of the fill. So I'm going to go ahead and finish digitizing the rest of this.
As promised, here is the fill stitch. Again, it's just a little spot on his back. I'm not too worried about it looking perfect. All right, now the last thing to do is his little eyeball. I'm going to do a fill stitch for this. You can also do a satin stitch. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and wide on the sides. And I'm going to change the direction to follow the direction of the eyeball. I know this looks super round and funky, but it should stitch much more narrow. Because this is a small shape, I'm going to bring the density down to 4. And I'm going to bring the length down to 4. I'm also going to give it a little bit more underlay, so I'm going to bring this down. All right, now that this is done, we're almost ready to do our test stitch. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these boxes because we don't want those to be stitched out. I'm going to hide the image beneath so I can see everything that I digitized and make sure everything is there. And at this time, you can go through all your stitches and make sure everything is where you want it to be. Now I'm going to go through my order of stitches that I have here and make sure all of my start and end points are how I want them to be. And the black is going to be the most important. So I'm just paying attention to these red and green nodes. Going to zoom in a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts here, so we're going to have a ton of jump stitches to deal with later, but I just want to make them as clean and as efficient as possible. Going to make this just a little bit wider so that his spot shows. Awesome! This is ready to go to make our test stitch.
As you can see in the test stitch, there were some areas where the artwork bled out of the outline, so I just went back into the software and made those adjustments before stitching out the final design. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.